Bonjour à toutes et tous et bienvenue.
So, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Émilie Bouchetey and I am the Director of the Artistic Development Cooperation Department of the French L'Institut Français, and I'm delighted to welcome you. I'm going to moderate this event today because we are here to launch officially the Archipel.eu project, some practical information. So the presentations are going to be recorded on Zoom, and it will be available on the website of Archipel, archipel.eu. Today, our speakers are going to speak French, but you have simultaneous interpretation into English, into Spanish, and into Portuguese. And in fact, in the chat, you will see how everything is going to be available and how you can have access to the simultaneous interpretation. Everything is going to be, of course, available on the website. So we can start officially the launch event. First of all, I would like to greet the honorable members of the European Parliament, the representatives of the European Commission, the honorable representatives of the outermost regions and of the European overseas countries and territories, of course, the members of the consortium, the spokesperson of the associated partners, and all of you participants to this presentation. Welcome to you all to this launch event of our project Archipel.eu. Now, together, what we're going to do is indeed launch the implementation of this project. Now, the European Union is, of course, continental Europe, but not only. Europe's border go across the oceans, as we all know, and it takes us to those so-called outermost regions. And we talk here about Guadeloupe, French Guiana, Martinique, Mayotte, the Reunion Island, Saint-Martin, the French side, the Azores and Madeira, and the Canary Islands for Spain. Now, of course, because of their geographical location, these outermost regions, what we call the ORs, bring incredible diversity to Europe. And just like the neighbors of the 13 overseas countries and territories, the OCTs, New Caledonia, French Polynesia, St. Barthélemy, St. Pierre and Miquelon, the French Southern and Antarctic lands, Wallis and Futuna for France, Greenland for Denmark, as well as Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, Saba, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin for the Netherlands. Well, we can say that really this project, Archipel.eu, covers the whole world, and this is what's bringing us together today. And you have to know that in October 2020, the European Commission's Directorate General for Regional and Urban Policy launched a call for proposals for a pilot project. The idea was to safeguard and promote culture in the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. Now, the Institut Français that I represent today, and we will have later on the Director General of the Institut Français, Errol Hoc. So the Institut Français with the OCTA, the Overseas Countries and Territories Associations, as well as the promotion agency of the Atlantic culture, APCA in Madeira, and several other supporting institutions, developed together this project, Archipel.eu. And we had the honor of being selected among those projects, and we have the immense pleasure to present you the project today. So the aim is to test a viable and effective financial support mechanism for individual artists, but for also groups of artists, as well as cultural organizations and institutions in the ORs and OCTs. So the mechanism aims to complement existing arrangements at local, regional, and or national levels. So what exactly is Archipel.eu? It's a financial support system. It will be based on a series of thematic calls for projects covering issues such as, for instance, the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, the mobility of artists, the promotion of contemporary creation in the overseas territories, and in close collaboration with the European Commission, with the consortium and our associated partners, we will experiment within the project different mechanisms in order to promote, to really strengthen the capacities of cultural stakeholders in the ORs and OCTs. So our ambition is to support at least 40 cultural organizations or institutions, to implement 65 projects, and to guarantee the mobility for more than 20 artists, and all this over a period of 18 months. Now, we'll pay particular attention to the use of new technologies, as well as the inclusion of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in the proposals that we'll choose to fund. On the basis, of course, of the feedback of our beneficiaries, but also on the basis of the analysis of the results during the experimental phase, and on the basis as well of the consultations with the stakeholders, we will then come up with recommendations at the end of the experiment, the test, and then we will indeed submit to the European Commission a report, a final report, with the analysis of the results, as well as our recommendations, as I said, for future strategies. Now, to launch this project that we want to be an ambitious one, we have the honor today to have several members of the European Parliament who will introduce and also close the event, the online event. And I would like to greet, and we would like to greet the members or the representatives of the European Commission, and more specifically, the Regional Directorate for Regional and Urban Policy, which is co-financing this pilot project. Now, we've got the representatives of the Institut Français, of OCTA and APCA. They will present the consortium that we all make up together. And then we will introduce to you the different institutions that make up the group of associated partners. And then we will launch the 3 calls for project, but I'll get back to that later on. And then we will have the opportunity to talk to you live. It means that you will be able to ask your questions in the chat, and I will then read them out loud at the end, and then we'll answer. We will answer them. I will now invite or give the floor to Younous Omarjee for the opening speech. He's the president of the Regional Development Committee of the European Parliament. He, of course, is the one who launched the initiative for a call of proposals. Dear Mr. Omarjee, you have the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for giving me a sign. Can you hear me? Yes, indeed. Well, greetings then to all participants, as well as to my colleagues, colleagues in the Parliament. It's a real pleasure for me to be here for the launch event. And I think we need to say this. This project would not have come about without the support of the European Parliament. It is a pilot project that is indeed an initiative of the European Parliament. It was voted on my proposal in the Budget Committee, and then it was, of course, voted during the plenary of the European Parliament. Now, if you don't know that, the European Parliament has the possibility indeed to present pilot projects, and in this framework, you can change the European Union's budget. And if the projects are adopted, well, the European Commission has to implement them. And we have come to this moment where we need to implement a pilot project that was born out of the will of the European Parliament and the European Commission. We wanted to have this pilot project because we wanted it to indeed go on testing mechanisms. We had a program for ORs and OCTs, a program in order to preserve the biological biodiversity in the ORs and OCTs. And we believe that in addition to biological diversity, cultural diversity is threatened at world level, as well as within those European overseas and outermost regions. And this is the reason why this project is so important. The contribution of indeed the ORs to the European cultural diversity is huge. And this is the reason why we believe that this project is essential. It's also an essential project because I firmly believe that this is the first time that we actually have a program that is specifically dedicated to culture and specifically dedicated to the European overseas countries and territories, the European OCT. So we're talking about the OCTs and of course the outermost regions. You know that the European Union is very much committed and wants to help the ORs, especially as regards issues of regional economic development, agriculture, fisheries. But of course, there is underfunding, underinvestment in the area of culture. And the culture in the ORs, in the OCTs, is just waiting for a commitment from the side of Europe. I think this pilot project is a first step. Archipel.eu is indeed a first step to show our commitment to the culture of these regions and countries and territories. And I hope that we will see, thanks to this project, several actions of promotion of indeed knowledge or making a knowledge or making known rather, of course, this culture. We have an article of the Treaty of on the functioning of the European Union, which is Article 79, and which allows us indeed to have a series of programs to support, of course, the OCTs and OR. And it's very important that we have a cultural approach as well in our support, because there are a couple of problems here that we need to tackle. And I believe that on the islands in particular that are very remote, indeed, there is a model of uniformization of cultural practices, which threatens these local cultures. And I believe that these cultures are threatened and they're fragile right now. We need to protect them. And you know, diversity is the essence, is in the essence of Europe. As Bakunin said, I believe uniformity is death, diversity is life. Diversity in its cultural sense within the European Union, or rather the diversity of the ORs and OCTs, the European ORs and OCTs, means life for the European project. This project, Archipel.eu, comes at a moment, at a very important moment in Europe, where you see a lot of reactions, an upsurge of far-right movements that have a completely different concept of European civilization and of the European way of life. We know that Europe extends to all sides of the world with local populations, native populations with their own very diverse cultural practices. And this is what makes up the richness of European peoples, but also the European model. And this is exactly what we need to underline right now. This is what we need to give value to. This is what we need to support and highlight it and highlight by means of our policies. I hope very much that this event, this launch event, which is a landmark, will also be a moment that will open perhaps a new page in our history, so that tomorrow we can indeed have an enhanced program, a more ambitious program that will allow the European Union to be really anchored next to the peoples of the European OCTs and ORs, that the European Union be able to indeed support their culture. Now we know the EU is radiating culturally speaking. I come myself from an island, the Reunion Island, and we have indeed a song which is called Maloya, which has been recognized as the World Heritage. The same goes for the Odaka in Guadeloupe. And on all our islands, on all the European islands or overseas territories and countries, you've got practices that need to be valued, that need to be better known also by continental Europe and continental Europeans. Because indeed, all this contributes to cementing unity between the European peoples. And to conclude, if I may, if I could perhaps have something or ask something from those who will be working in the framework of this project, well, keep in mind, please, that if you give value to diversity, you're doing something that is absolutely essential in order for us all to go forward on the path towards unity. And this is really our objective, how to promote cultural diversity, to give life to the notion of unity on which the European project is based. This is a very important moment, and I hope all of the stakeholders that are taking part in the meeting who will get to know, of course, about this launching, well, that everyone will take ownership of this project and will come up with very concrete proposals to make sure that this really has meaning. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Omarjee. I believe that we now understood very well how this project was born, what is the ambition. So it's really in order to promote the overseas cultures. I see that there are a lot of questions on simultaneous translation in the chat. Now, we have interpretation in the chat on the right of your screen. You have indeed some links that will allow you to listen to the interpretation. You've got interpretation in English, in Spanish, and in Portuguese. The Commission indeed will take the floor in English later on. So now I'll give the floor to Claudio Monteiro de Aguiar, representing Madeira. Now, we know that she follows very, very closely, of course, the cultural scene of the OOs and OCTs. She could not be with us, but she launched a message per video, which we are now going to launch so that you can listen to her.
You and a special thanks to the invitation made by the Director General of the Institut Français, Mr. Harold Ock. It's a huge opportunity to participate in this official launch of the Archipel.eu program. I came from Madeira Island, one of the 9 outermost regions of Europe. And like the other ones, we do understand how rich we are coming from the Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean Basin, South America. All these regions are authentic life labs of culture, history, architecture, gastronomy, craft heritage. Of course, by our geography, by our characteristics, history, but also coming from the contact with many civilizations. Well, I think that this kind of specific calls that are open to support culture in these regions, the outermost regions, the overseas countries and territories, are crucial to give to our communities an opportunity to show their value, but also is an opportunity to understand the added value of these regions to Europe. At this particular time, coming out from a pandemic crisis, it's important to understand how can we help these regions, the outermost regions. And as we know, cultural heritage. So therefore, this project can also contribute indirectly to the recovery of the tourism sector in these particular regions. As we stated, in the strategy that the European Parliament launched regarding tourism that was approved last March, where I was responsible rapporteur for this particular document. It's crucial to understand how regions, how communities can be engaged and to help to make the transition and coming up from this pandemic crisis to contribute to the recovery of these regions. So I think also, and I believe that the recovery of the Union is not going to happen without culture, without tourism, and also without the creative industries. So I hope that this call will not be a sole opportunity for these regions. This is just the beginning of some of the support that we can deliver and that we can give to our artists, all the organizations that work on the cultural sector, and in particular the ones that are so far away from the EU mainland, but in which their identity, their work, their values enrich so much the European Union. Just let me share with you that here at the European Parliament we will continue to work hard on several issues, but especially regarding the particularities of the outermost regions of the archipel, of the regions that are far from the mainland, from the center of the European Union. And we will continue our work dealing especially with these regions and trying to create some programs, some help, some solutions to our citizens, and particularly to the ones coming from the outermost regions. Thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you all success for this project.
Alors, merci à Madame la députée.
Thank you very much to our member of the European Parliament, Claudia Monteiro de Aguiar, and thanks for the video message. I think I have a small technical problem. There we go. Now I will give the floor to a member of the European Parliament, Juan Fernando López Aguilar, representing the Canary Islands of Spain. You have the floor.
Good day. I hope you see me. I hope you can hear me. It's my pleasure and my privilege to be sharing this particular point of time and meeting with you with this particular occasion, aim and purpose, the launching of nothing less than Archipel.eu program, a pilot program. We can only commend all the institutions that have worked hand in hand in order to come up with this very good idea and make it to the very best as its implementation in the near future, in the years to come. Because I think it is actually great, the purpose of enshrining as objectives of this pilot program, safeguarding, promoting, and supporting cultural heritage and cultural creation, cultural knowledge, and cultural workers with its people and practices on board, which are such an incredible asset of the way of being European in the outermost regions and overseas territories. Second, improving cultural dialogue, exchanging good experiences and practice and creations between outermost regions and overseas countries, considering that I am actually wearing one of my hats, one of my favorite hats as a member of the European Parliament, being a Canarian born, being a Canarian resident, being an outermost region MEP, working hand by hand with my colleagues, men and women who have been born or reside in an outermost region which is represented through the particular member states, Spain, Portugal, and France, in the European Union and hence in the European Parliament. And the third objective, disseminating cultural and creative works from overseas cultures through mobility, through all sorts of projects, creative projects, including virtual projects. I can only hope that this pilot program will be before and an after, will be a new beginning, a new push, a new impetus, a new momentum for the creation, the cultural creation and creativity work in all sorts of arts and the component elements of the cultural heritage in the outermost regions. Believe me when I tell you, I am sure that it is the case also in the rest of the outermost regions, not only in the one that I have the privilege to consider mine, which is the Canaries. In the outermost regions, surely creation is a way forward. Creation is actually a way of being what you actually are. By the same token, an islander, by the same token, a national citizen of your member state within the European Union, and by the same token, truly a European citizen. Actually, in the Canaries, cultural creation is a way of being Canarian, Spaniard, and European. And that is why the Canaries is actually a superpower when it comes to cultural heritage and cultural creation in all possible cultural languages. Graphic arts, plastic arts, music. Wow, we are a supercultural power, a superpower in music creation and as a development. Also, when it comes to movie making, when it comes to exchanging experiences that have to do with the way of being an islander in a European Union. So I can only praise that we are coming forward with this pilot program. I can only be sure that it will be meaningful and it will be bringing about the most fruitful results very, very soon. So I can only hope that we will, in this particular occasion, be able to reach out to the public we are aiming to reach out to cultural creators, to reach out to the people who live out of culture, so that they can actually make the best of this pilot program, exchange experiences, talk to each other, show their creativity and their creations, and hence making us all better Europeans. So thank you for this opportunity to talking to you, and looking forward that it will actually reach out to the creators of the outermost regions, overseas territories, so that they talk to each other and talk to us all and make us all better. Bye. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le député européen, pour votre allocution.
Thank you very much, MEP Lopez Aguilar. I will now give the floor to the European Commission, now to the DG Regio, the Director General for Regional and Urban Policy. I will now give the floor to Paula Duarte Gaspar, Head of Unit, who will help us understand the importance of this pilot project in the framework of the European Commission's strategic approach to the outermost regions. Now, since the beginning of this project, we've been working closely with Paula and her team. Dear Paula, it's your turn.
Merci, Madame la Directrice. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the European Parliament, good afternoon. Muito boa tarde a todos os portugueses que estão conosco. Buenas tardes a todos. It is an honor to be with you this afternoon to launch this important pilot project. And I would like to thank warmly the Institut Français for organizing this event. As you have heard already, the pilot project we are launching today aims to promote, to protect, to disseminate the unique cultures with a big S of the outermost regions of the European Union and the overseas countries and territories. Let me say a few words about the context for this project. As was mentioned already by Mr. Chairman Omarjee, we have in the European Union a strategic partnership with the most remote regions of the European Union, which are the outermost regions scattered across the world, right behind me, in the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, Latin America, and the Caribbean Sea, but part and parcel of the European Union, just like Brussels region. And this is why within our strategy, we do precisely what Mr. Aguilar has just said. We reach out to the citizens of the outermost regions, including the artists, to ensure that they benefit from being part of the European Union. And of course, we also work in close cooperation and association with the so-called overseas countries and territories, which have close historic ties with some of the countries of the European Union, even though they are not part of the Union. But what matters here today is that both the outermost regions and the overseas countries and territories have this unique, rich, cross-civilization cultural heritages that are very little known. And this is why we believe the time has come to make these cultures known through workshops, through conferences, etc., to support artists from these remote places, and to foster cultural dialogue and exchanges, in particular in an environmentally friendly manner. And this is precisely what this pilot project is about. And by providing small grants to artists, to culture organizations, we very much hope that we will make a difference. We will make a difference in supporting culture and in helping to boost the recovery of a sector which was particularly hit by the COVID crisis. And I would like to thank the European Parliament, as Mr. Chairman Omarjee said. This is a pilot project which was proposed by the European Parliament and which the Commission is following very closely together with the Institut Français and its partners. And to conclude, the main people here are the artists and the culture organizations. So I would like to encourage all the artists and all the cultural organizations out there from the outermost regions, from the overseas countries and territories to participate. This project is for you. Seize this opportunity, and we're very much here to support you. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Duarte-Gaspard, for your words. I will go back to French. L'Institut français est vraiment honoré de pouvoir travailler en étroite collaboration avec la Commission.
The French Institute is honored to be able to work closely with the European Commission on this pilot project. And I would like to give the floor to our Director General, Mr. Errol Ock, who will address you to explain the resonance between this pilot project and the philosophy of the French Institute. Up to you, Errol. Thank you. Thank you, dear European MPs, dear representatives of the European Commission, dear members of the consortium, dear associated partners and participants. It is with great pleasure that I'm addressing you today so that we can launch together Archipel.eu, a pilot project that is being implemented thanks to the support of the European Commission, DG Region, as an initiative to preserve and promote culture in the outermost regions and European overseas countries and territories. And I'd like to thank all European MPs who've taken the floor so far. This pilot project is an important step in the commitment of the French Institute and the Cultural Network for the Caribbean and overseas territories. It also opens up shared horizons thanks to the development of innovative actions carried out in a European framework alongside with our associated partners. What about the French Institute? We are the public institution in charge of France's external cultural action. Under the joint supervision of the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Culture, it supports the French cultural network abroad, the embassies, cooperation, and cultural action departments, 98 French institutes and their respective branches, the Alliance Française network, and 27 French research institutes abroad. So highly diversified. Its action is at the crossroad of the arts, intellectual exchanges, linguistic cooperation as well, and cultural and social innovation. And throughout the world, the Institute brings cultures to life and works to build bridges and artistic exchanges. For several years now, we have adapted our approach and our positioning as a dynamic cultural actor on the European scene. We are heavily involved in European networks, such as the EU National Institutes for Culture Network and European partnerships. Our engagement is also reflected in our involvement as leader or partner in projects co-financed by the EU concerning both Europe and the EU's external cultural action. In addition, the Institut Français for several years now has been strengthening its cultural activities with the Caribbean and overseas territories. Inspired by the rich cultural programs conducted with artists and cultural operators on the African continent for many years, the Institut Français set out in 2007 to develop the program Caraïbes en Création with a historic launch under the patronage of Aimé Césaire. The increase of the French Institute's action towards these territories is naturally in line with the strategy of the Ministry of Culture. In September 2019, with the support of the Ministry of Culture and 3 DGs, the French Institute launched the Caribbean Fund, supporting the mobility of artists and cultural professionals. In October 2020, we launched the Indian Ocean Mobility Fund, which supports the movement of artists and professionals between the 9 countries of the Southwest Indian Ocean. At the same time, it seemed necessary to us to make the artists and professionals of these territories benefit from the whole of our programs and to promote creation coming from these territories. Expectations remain high, particularly with regard to relations between the overseas territories and the African continent, but also the visibility of overseas cultures. The stakes are high in terms of mobility and capacity building. The reinforcement of the French Ministry of Culture's funds on these subjects and the mobilization of the cultural network on regional cooperation with the ORs and OCTs mark what can be called an ultramarine momentum. It is in this context that the French Institute has chosen to consolidate its support for the promotion of artistic initiatives from overseas by creating new financial support mechanisms for the cultures of the ORs and OCTs with the support of the European Commission. Archipel.eu, this pilot project for the safeguard and promotion of culture in the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories, is conceived as a facility that can complement our actions carried out within the framework of other projects financed by the EU, such as iPortunus, a facility aimed at supporting individual mobility within Europe. Archipel.eu is a strong commitment of the French Institute alongside all the partners of the project. It consolidates our support to the French ORs and OCTs while developing new relations with Spanish and Portuguese ORs, as well as OCTs linked to Denmark and the Netherlands. We would like to warmly thank the European Commission for having entrusted us with the possibility of actively contributing to the promotion of these cultural dynamics, supporting the mobility of artists within these territories, encouraging the circulation of works that are unique testimonies of the specificity of these cultures, participating in the enhancement of the intangible heritage of these territories, so that in return there is increased ownership and the world can know them better. This is the ambitious program that we are committed to implement through the calls for projects that will be presented to you this morning. To carry out this pilot project, we can count on the members of the consortium, to whom I will give the floor in a minute. We are also counting on the mobilization and commitment of the associated partners. This launch is also an opportunity to launch a collective momentum rich in the cultural singularities of each territory. Together, then, let us build these cultural bridges from Greenland to New Caledonia, from Aruba to the Canaries, from Reunion to Madeira, and towards all the other outermost regions and OCTs covered by this project. I wish every success to the Archipel.eu pilot project and to all those who make this constellation live. Thank you. So this project holds its place in the activities of the French institutes, and we are delighted to be the lead on this ambitious project. But we're not alone. We work in particular together with OCTA, which is the voice of overseas countries and territories, and I propose to listen to Mr. Atoloto Malo, Vice Chairman of the OCTA Executive Committee. He could not be with us today, so we will watch a video clip together now. No, Atoloto is in the meeting. Oh, I thought it was a video, but much better. Mr. Malo, would you like to take the floor? We're delighted to see you here with us. It's you don't want to see me? Good morning. Hello. Good afternoon. I won't try and say good afternoon in other languages, in Aruba, local language or others. But ladies and gentlemen, members of parliament, I would like to greet you just like the speakers who spoke before me this afternoon. It is an honor for me to address you on behalf of OCTA, the Overseas Countries and Territories Association of the European Union. This association was created in 2003, and its primary vocation is to carry the voices of overseas countries and territories in the EU. And with this Archipel.eu program, we commit to strengthening dialogue and cultural exchange among the OCTs, but also between the OCTs and the outermost regions and across the European Union as well. As a partner in the implementation of the pilot project, OCTA's role is plural. In particular, it undertakes to mobilizing its network of members to disseminate calls for projects as widely as possible within OCTs, supporting artists and cultural institutions in OCTs in order for them to reach their full potential, and supporting as well the French Institute, which is our main partner in this project, in drafting recommendations with the help of associated experts. OCTA is very proud to be associated with the Archipel.eu pilot project. This project gives additional visibility to the cultural wealth of the OCTs and outermost regions. We are fully aware that culture is the very essence of the identity of their inhabitants, and promoting and safeguarding their cultural heritage, and even more the living cultural heritage of these territories, is a guarantee of recognition of the communities and individuals who carry this heritage, in addition to allowing its dissemination and transmission to future generations. So that their culture can last. This is the exact message that we convey. At the scale of the European Union, the inclusion of the island's culture is an additional wealth, and it is meant to complement the notion of an inclusive European identity. As we said, well, this is quite topical, but we need to unite in order to make headway, to make progress. And this was carry additional added value for everyone. I would like to add that the promotion of OCT culture in all its diversity is essential in many ways. However, it is the young generation of OCTs who will bear this promise. This is why I would like to give the floor to the young generation of overseas countries and territories. They were able to shoot a short video during the Youth Week organized in Brussels and Strasbourg from the 4th to the 9th of October, last week, as a matter of fact, both in Strasbourg and Brussels, as I said. And I would like you to be able to listen to them. They have something to say about culture in OCTs, what it means for them. Because they are the ones who will carry the torch and continue promoting culture in the future. So please, I'd like to give the floor to them. Thank you. So it's a video clip that we could show now. Let's do this. Oh, this is why I was confused before. I thought you were speaking on video as well. Okay, so we will see this clip now.
Because it has been suppressed in a very long time, and it's only just recently been strengthened, especially by the youth. So cultural heritage is
On va revenir après la vidéo si on arrive à la localisation. Je fais une petite conclusion sur cette vidéo. Désolée, Monsieur Malo, en tout cas. Merci beaucoup pour ce partage. Donc, ce qu'on entend bien, vous parlez des jeunes citoyens.
We heard that you talk about the youth who represent their territories, their roots. We will try and listen to this clip at the end of the session, before or after questions, and we'll be able to listen to these young people. I'd like to give the floor to Mauricio Marquez, who is president of the APCA Board of Directors, the third institution that makes up our consortium. we are very happy to have APCA, Agência de Promoção da Cultura Atlântica, among our closest partners, because this collaboration allows Archipel.eu to have a foothold in Madeira and in the geographical region that surrounds it. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Marques.
I will speak in English. I think it's better for translation. And also will be very brief because a lot of us was said about the Archipel project by our partners and by the European Commission. APCA is the leading entity in Madeira regarding cultural management, and we help a lot of artists and other projects and other entities in their projects regarding cultural and creative industries. So it was very natural for us to belong and to join this fantastic initiative by the DG Radio, and also to collaborate with the DOCTA and the Institut Français. Indeed, the creative and cultural sector of the outermost regions and other countries of Europe is still unknown to the most of Europeans, but also unpromoted. Even tourism, which is an important industry for these regions, doesn't show the real picture regarding these creative and cultural stakeholders that exists. Often, tourism relies more on entertainment and animation, tourism animation, and does not promote the real culture and the best of the creativity or even the cultural heritage. So the Archipel project can be a game changer for all. It can be a game changer for the outermost regions of Europe because it can trigger new opportunities for artists and creators. It can create added value to the economy and thus creating more jobs and creating more exports. But most for the European Union decision makers, the Archipel project can also be and create and build a new framework for more fair participation of the outermost regions entities in Europe regarding in the decision-making of new programs and new incentives. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in this project, not only to promote and to show the creativity and the cultural diversity of the artists that are based on these outermost regions of Europe, but also to work closely with the European Union that in order to create a more fair participation of these entities in the future programs that Europe will create. So basically, this is what I hope for the future, because APCA is based on Madeira Island. We normally work with other entities based in Canary Islands, in the Azores Islands, also in Cape Verde, and also with other countries in Martinique and Guadeloupe. And this is a common desire for these entities. So anyway, I thank the European Commission and DG Radio for this launch of this initiative, which is very enthusiastic and it's been very welcomed in these islands. And I hope at the end of it, we can have new partnerships or a new way to collaborate with the European Union for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Mauricio Marques, pour vos mots. Je vais maintenant passer la parole
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Madina Regnault, who is in charge of the Archipel.eu project. Madina will first introduce you the associated partners of the project. Madina, your turn.
Alors, bonjour à toutes et à tous. C'est un véritable plaisir de pouvoir...
Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be able to launch Archipel.eu with you all today. This pilot project is coordinated by a consortium, but we have also a group of associated partners that have supported, of course, the nominations, and we hope that indeed we will be able to prolong the project. Now we have a consultative committee, or it works as a consultative committee, and we really ask our associate partners to intervene. intervene. They are relay in terms of communicating and diffusing, of course, a call for actions or for proposals. Now, this is very, very important in order to make sure that all the OCTs and all the ORs know about the calls for proposals. And they have experts, of course, that can assess the proposals. And it is, of course, the first circle of people that we will consult in preparing, of course, the recommendations that we will submit to the European Commission after this pilot project. So I would like to thank all those partners that are here with us today. As we said before, Archipel.eu is a collective adventure, but we can only really make it a reality with the participation of each and every one. Now, these are associate partners, and of course, they can take the floor later on when we'll have a dialogue with the participants. We have, first of all, the Fundación Las Cajas de Canarias. The foundation develops, of course, cultural and artistic activities. The aim is to reach a wider audience. So the idea is to have the call for proposal in a very rich area as are the Canary Islands. Now, we've got the Région Réunion. So this is an OR in the Indian Ocean. So the aim is to safeguard and promote the linguistic and artistic diversity, also make sure that we know how those ORs contribute to the diversity, to the European culture, developing networks between researchers and artists. And of course, we will mobilize a lot of expertise in order to make sure that the information on these programs are well known, and then afterwards to select the proposals and then draft the recommendations. We also have among our associate partners, the directorates for cultural affairs of Martinique and Guadeloupe. Now, these are institutions that implement the policy of the French Ministry of Culture on the whole of the French territory, of course, of the concern or the territory that is covered. Now, the work of the director will be communication, make sure that there is a follow-up of the beneficiaries and a feedback. We'll see if we can increase support to the development of culture, or the cultural development in the Caribbean region. We also have the DESICA in New Caledonian, the Cultural Center of Jibao, which is, of course, working on the Kanak cultural heritage and the valorization of this heritage. Now, beyond of course, talking about the calls for proposals, the DCA will also identify partners that may be interested in the call for proposals, and it will indeed monitor the projects that will be selected if they are. Now, let's go back to the Atlantic Ocean. The Madeira University, or UMA, which is also part of our associate partners. Now, of course, the university will indeed work on the adaptation of the cultural sector to the new limits and constraints in order to prepare the ground for the recovery of tourism. So the UMA will give some advice on the new digital solutions, new digital support for cultural exchange, thanks to virtual mobility tools, such as the creation of a mapping interface, an interactive map interface. Now, there is a recent partner that just joined the Archipel.eu of the Turin University. Now, this laboratory, Archipel.eu, that indeed studies the culture in overseas territories. Now, the aim is scientific research, the divulgation of knowledge, but also the promotion of cultural and scientific projects in cooperation with the associations in the ORs and OCTs. And we have other partners. We have Relais Culture Europe, which is a public structure, the mission of which is to support innovation and cultural cooperation between European stakeholders at artistic and creative levels. And ever since its beginning, it's really focused on the OCTs. Relais Culture Europe will be involved in all the phases of the implementation of our mechanism. UNIC is another of our associate partners, and EU National Institutes for Culture in the European member states, and they deal with cultural relations. And it fosters, of course, cultural relations in more than 100 countries around the world, with 132 32 clusters. Now, UNIC will allow us to really make sure that Archipel.eu's possibilities are well known around the world. And our last partner, On the Move, which is a cultural mobility information network. Now, the expertise of this network will allow us to target and to follow, of course, the artists and cultural professionals in remote territories for which mobility is really an essential need, for whom mobility is an essential need. So we have a lot of good partners. Now we want to make sure that with this group, we can create reflection groups on the protection, the visibility, and of course, the safeguarding of the cultures of ORs and OCTs. Now we're going to have regular meetings with our associate partners in order to share information, but also to share our common vision for this ambitious project. And now this group is not a closed. We can still have one or two consultative members that can bring about perhaps geographical or technical expertise. So we are open to your proposals, so don't hesitate to get back to me after the launch event. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marina. So as you see, we have a lot of associate partners that are sharing indeed, well, their knowledge on the ground. And this allows us, of course, to exchange best practices in favor of the visibility of course, overseas cultures. And this allows us also to relay our calls for proposals in their own territories. Now, I will now give back the floor to Madina, because now we're going to get to the core of our subject today. So she's going to present to you the call for projects that we're launching today. Madina, we can't hear you. Thank you very much, and thank you to my colleagues for having shared with you the PowerPoint that we've prepared, so as to present to you the different calls for proposals, or call for projects rather. What I'm going to do is explain the different calls. So we have 3 calls for proposals or for projects. The first one is the fund for, sorry, I can't see my screen, says the speaker. The fund for the safeguarding and promotion of, so fund for the safeguarding and promotion of the intangible cultural heritage of ORs and OCTs. So that's going to be open from the 13th of October, so today, until the 13th of February. So it's 4 months. So it's a multidisciplinary project. So in line with the 2003 UNESCO Convention, the fund works to safeguard and promote the intangible cultural heritage, popular arts, popular practices, and ancestral cultures of the ORs and OCTs. So what is the budget line for this specific fund? We have 270,000 euros. The projects can get an amount or a budget up to 20,000 euros per project. So following a selection process, the selection committee will choose a minimum of 15 proposals who will get financial support in the framework of this call for projects. Now, this course is aimed at cultural organizations or institutions that are active and that work in the outermost regions or in overseas countries and territories. Now, what are the topics? Or rather, who can apply? Well, you can have universities, museums, eco-museums, society museums, as we call them, NGOs, associations, cultural centers, foundations, resource centers, research and institutions, archives, tourist structures, etc. So the principle is to support innovative projects that question, analyze, and highlight the cultural wealth of the ORs and OCTs. Now, it's worth noting that part of the budget is allocated to the use of digital technologies in the implementation of the activities. Now, this fund for intangible cultural heritage can support projects such as the organization of conferences, seminars, training activities, cultural mapping projects, research papers, exhibitions, other relevant small-scale event, whether in presence or in virtual form, the creation of online platforms, for instance, awareness raising and dissemination actions, etc. Now, what are the conditions? Well, the selected projects must contribute to advancing research and knowledge in the field of the intangible cultural heritage of these territories and regions. The project must pay particular attention to the participation of the communities, of the practitioners of the intangible cultural heritage, so as to enhance the social dimension of this heritage. And in the end, the proposals have to include also training dimension, or must aim to transmit or exchange good practices. Another fund is the Archipel.eu Mobility Fund, which is launched today until the 1st of December 2022, not 2021, 22. Now, this is a fund that aims to exchange physical or virtual mobility for cultural professionals and artists from the overseas territories in the outermost regions of the European Union, the European Union OCTs as well, but also throughout the European Union. We have 250,000 euros available, but it's divided, this sum is divided between two calls. So the first one that we'll launch it today, for which we have a budget of 100,000 euro. And in February 2022, there'll be another budget that will be made available of 150,000 euros in February 2022. So the call for project is aimed at creators. We have a bit of a connection problem. So we're talking about individual groups of artists, professionals that are residing or living in the ORs or OCTs. So you can, we are talking about all sorts of disciplines: performing arts, music, visual arts, design, architecture, digital creation. Now, the fund is based on an open call, which is continuously open until December 2022. So what are we talking about in terms of mobility? Individual mobility, physical mobility, hybrid, so face-to-face and digital events, but also all digital projects like virtual exhibitions, interactive performances, masterclasses, webinars, etc. Now, as regards physical mobility, beneficiaries will have their costs, their transport costs covered, whether by sea or by air, and also per diems will be covered for a maximum of 15 days. As regard virtual mobility, we'll have a reimbursement on actual costs on the basis of a provisional budget to be attached to the application form. So for instance, registration fees for online or hybrid events can be covered by the fund. Individual mobility assistance is not intended to cover the cost of transporting goods or works of art or equipment. So we're talking just here about personal mobility. What are the eligibility criteria? Well, the project leaders must reside in an outermost region of the European Union or an overseas country or territory. Now, the mobility must cover a period of 7 up to 15 days, and the projects must take place between January 2022 and the 1st of February 2023. Of course, we'll take your questions if you have any on the different calls for proposals or projects. The third one that we're launching today for a period of 3 months is the collection Archipel.eu special edition. So launch today until January 13th, 2022. So among the measures implemented in the framework of the pilot project, Archipel.eu collection provides international support for cultural operators in the 9 outermost regions and 13 OCTs. We have a budget of 150,000 euros, and the grant awarded under this call for proposals is a maximum 20,000 euros per project. So we have a selection committee. We'll select, of course, a variety of proposals that will be collected in a catalog dedicated to cultural offers coming from the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. Now, all structures whose cultural offerings will be included in the Archipel.eu collection will be eligible for financial support. Now, the fund dedicated to Archipel.eu collection will make it possible to support about 15 proposals, even more perhaps. Now, these projects will benefit from a financial support for their dissemination. Now, the collection Archipel.eu special edition calls aims, first of all, to identify those cultural offers that can be proposed for dissemination on the one hand, and on the other to support financially this dissemination. So you've got two types of support. Support in terms of visibility for the artistic proposals that will make up the collection. And that means that the institution and cultural operators from the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories are invited to submit their proposals that represent the creative dynamics and vitality of their territory and that can be easily presented in other contexts. So you'll have an experts committee which will select a wide range of proposals that will be included in the catalog, which will be dedicated to the cultures of the outermost regions of the European Union and the overseas countries and territories. Now, this catalog will be distributed to artistic and cultural institutions at international levels so as to encourage the dissemination and presentation of the works that are collected in the catalog. The second time of support is a financial support for the dissemination of the works in the collection catalog. So the funding will be allocated to the structures carrying the works and artistic proposals. This call for project is aimed at public or private cultural institutions or structures for creation and professional dissemination in the ORs and OCTs. If they wish to propose existing works in order to promote their dissemination beyond their territory of origin. So we can talk here about museums, theaters, choreographic centers, modern music scenes, festivals, companies, artistic agencies, productions offices, show producers, publishers, record houses, and what have you. Now, what are the eligibility criteria? So proposals should be made up or should be drawn with the professional actors of the sector in question, so programmers, distributors, publishers, platforms, museums, art festivals, festivals, etc. That's the first condition. Second prerequisite, the proposals must guarantee some kind of remuneration, fees, copyright contracts for the artists that are involved. So that has to be included in the provisional budget. And the proposals must include a dimension of training or transmission or exchange of good practices, for instance, with meetings between artists, with professionals, such as masterclasses, workshops, conferences, professional seminars, workshops in schools or universities. So the proposal will be disseminated on several stages, or they will be disseminated at regional or continental European level. And these are the proposals that are going to be selected or given the priority. Now, the eligibility criteria are that, first of all, living artists are involved, that the projects are easily implemented, or can be adapted rather to various contexts, that they can give rise to meetings, to debates, to training, to dissemination, that the broadcast or presentation of these projects take place between March 2022 and March 2023. And you have to get at least one letter of intent from a structure in another tree wishing to program the proposed cultural offer. So I was quite detailed about the different mechanisms that we want to provide you with. And of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I will now give the floor to Émilie. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this very detailed presentation of the project. And now I would like perhaps to launch the video with a testimony of the OCT youth. Now, just after the video, you will have the possibility to ask us questions in the chat. Tell us who you want to ask the question to. And of course, if you write your questions in the chat, we'll be able to convey them to the people you want to ask them to. So the video now.
It's important to promote the Greenlandic culture because it has been suppressed in a very long time, and it's only just recently been strengthened especially by the youth. So cultural heritage is important because it builds a nation and it builds a nation's identity.
Parce que quand on parle de Polynésie française, la première chose à laquelle les personnes pensent, c'est les plages blanches, Bora Bora et la mer. Mais on est plus que ça, on a une histoire, on a une identité.
We are much more than this. We are more on...
more diverse and stronger European Union.
Le fait d'expliquer au monde que l'Académie, il y a plusieurs cultures, ça peut être très intéressant d'être reconnu finalement parce que nous apprenons beaucoup de choses de l'Europe, nous apprenons beaucoup de choses sur l'Europe et je pense que l'Europe doit aussi apprendre des choses de ces territoires.
I think it's important to promote our culture. So the member states...
Je crois que c'est important pour notre culture et tous les États membres que nous représentons peuvent en apprendre aussi sur notre culture. Et donc, nous pouvons créer cette synergie entre nous. C'est comme cela que...
On connaît chaque culture de chaque territoire.
We know the culture of each territory. This gives us a more global picture.
More aspects and facets to cultures within the European family.
Aruba è un'isola onde è idioma da lo che noi chiamiamo è patrimonio culturale e nostra cultura e nostro idioma da hobby conectano a altro.
Ça va permettre de pouvoir ajouter.
This will enable us to know better member states and they will have increased diversity. Much more beautiful than that they have to start with.
Désolée pour mes interférences sonores, je n'entendais moi-même pas et je ne voyais pas la vidéo, mais le tout, c'est que vous ayez tous pu la voir. Voilà, on est content d'avoir pu la diffuser, comme promis aux représentants de l'OCTA. Alors, voici maintenant venu le temps de l'échange. Donc, merci pour vos questions dans le chat. Je vais les prendre au fur et à mesure grâce à l'aide de mes collègues en back-office. Alors, on a une première question de la délégation del Gobierno des Canaries à tout le monde. La question était, c'est quoi la culture ultramarine? Donc, merci pour cette question. Je vais y répondre. Évidemment, il s'agit de parler au pluriel des cultures ultramarines. Évidemment des cultures au pluriel d'outre-mer, on est bien conscient de la diversité des formes d'expression, des histoires, etc. Et voilà, et de la diversité, de la richesse des territoires.
What we're talking about is really indeed so the diversity of outermost region and overseas. So ultramarine in French means overseas, and this is what we talk about.
La deuxième question, c'était, je vais la lire en anglais. We would like to know the context for all the partners. Donc, je dirais que c'est l'idée, c'est de pouvoir contacter Madina Regno.
The idea is that you contact Madina Regno, who's the project leader for Archipel.eu, and she will be the one centralizing the questions around the project. So you'll find in the chat, indeed, the address of Madina. Don't hesitate to write her an email. We have a third question from Beatrice Manot.
I would like to ask one more thing. Is an association of an OR is applying for this program to carry out its cultural activity in an area of Europe that is not the OR or PO, for example, the Azores Balears? So the answer is yes. I think that's a simple answer. Then we have more questions. Donc on a une question de Madame Margarida Benevides.
Margarida Benevides.
Je vais la lire en anglais, si vous me permettez, comme elle m'arrive en anglais.
I'm going to read it in English.
Azorian, and I have a musical project. Our goal is to take our music to different parts of the world. In January, we are going to Brazil, and we are very interested in taking our music to all the peripheries and the ultramarine areas. So I think Madina can maybe answer these questions. Madina, est-ce que tu veux prendre la question?
Oui, bien sûr, avec plaisir.
Yes, of course, with pleasure. So this is a very relevant question, of course, because the interest or the aim of this project is to make sure that the cultures are being disseminated elsewhere. So of course, we're going to look at every proposal to see if they're linked to our project. But our priorities, of course, is the idea to create bridges with continental Europe, between the OCTs and ORs and continental Europe. But of course, there is an international dimension also that we will take into account, of course. Thank you very much, Madina. We have another question regarding communication around this the project. What is foreseen in terms of communication dissemination of the calls for those territories that are not represented in the consortium or by the partners, Guyana, for instance? Madina, excellent question. Well, several answers. First of all, Guyana is not represented among associated partners. That's true, but we have the DAC. So we've got the directorates of cultural affairs in Martinique and Guadeloupe, and they will be our relays. And they work in close collaboration with the DCA in Guyana. So those of you in French Guyana, don't worry, you will have access to the information and to the advisors in Guyana with whom I had an exchange recently. So you will be guided. And if you have questions, of course, don't hesitate to get back to me. And don't hesitate to contact, of course, our colleagues from the DCA, the Directorate for Cultural Affairs in Guyana. And we will also have a website on Archipel.eu that we're launching today. And you will find all sorts of information that we will have indeed, or we plan to have indeed a frequently asked questions section. So I will answer the questions that you asked today or the other questions that you will ask in future and that may be interested for other people so that we make communication a little bit easier amongst ourselves. Thank you. Thank you, Madina. I have a question from Fabienne Courtin. Hello, would it be possible to have several mechanisms for a longer mobility project? 15 days is a little bit too short for professional contacts. Well, I'm going to answer. It's an experiment, really. It's a test. So indeed, in the framework of the call, or rather in the framework of this pilot project, we set the date for 15 days maximum. We will perhaps review that, but we started with this period. But we may review it in the future. But we decided to start with 15 days because we're experimenting right now. But at the end of the pilot project, we will reassess that and perhaps make it longer in the future project. Another question of Rihanna Hernandez.
Donc je vais repasser la parole à Madina pour qu'elle nous réexplique le fonctionnement.
I will give the floor to Madina so that she can indeed the process of IFPROG, what we call in l'Institut Français IFPROG, which is the application that allows you to send indeed a nomination. Yes, we have a platform called IFPROG, which is a platform on which you can indeed fill up a form and send your proposals. So you will have the link IFPROG on the website of Archipel.eu. I think you have all the addresses on the chat right now, or the URLs, and you will find the link pretty much everywhere because we're launching the project today in the coming hours. I don't believe that no one will have had the time to really fill up the form, but as soon as you're ready, you will be able to use that application, EFPOG, or that platform rather, that will allow you to indeed send your applications. Another question. So this literature, is literature covered by the mechanisms? We're talking a lot about, for instance, artists, about music, but we haven't heard the word literature and the written word. Of course, says Madina. So the aim is to be multidisciplinary, really. So what we want to make sure is that the different forms of artistic expression and cultural expressions are covered. And of course, this encompasses literature. Literature is eligible. Another question from Rehan Hernandez. Is there a specific age or an age limit? No, 7 to 77 and more even, it doesn't matter. It's very clear. Cyrielle Cuirassier from Mayotte is asking us if it's possible, if we can confirm that we're talking about small direct funding without any co-financing, and she's asking us, well, if we want to apply, how do we do that? How do we apply? Once or two times? And also you use the word in French, ultramarin, but you do not take into account the whole of the ORs, like the Azores, Madeira, and the Canary Islands. It looks like this is really an OROCT project, so not just the ORs. So could you change the terminology? So how do you apply, first of all? Medina. So yes, we're talking here about small fundings, small subsidies, small grants without co-financing. Well, no, to be honest, the structures must be able to cover 10% of the financing. It's not a lot, but this is what we ask. Now, I didn't want to go into the technical details today because we're going to explain everything else in the calls for projects themselves. The idea today was to really explain to you the types of eligible projects. And the second question, what was it again? Well, I hope I understand well. So what's the calls for projects? I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is. So there are 3 calls for projects. So as I said before, those projects are launched for all of them today, but they don't come to an end at the same time. So the first covers a period of 4 months. The second is until December 2022. And the third one is a 3-month period. So of course, the dates are different and the mechanisms are different. I'm not quite sure I understood the question, says the speaker. Thank you. And the last question of Cyrielle Cuirassier said, well, you're talking about indeed overseas, but you don't take into account the Azores, Madeira, and the Canary Islands. But of course, it seems to me that it's not just the OCTs, it's also the ORs. Madina, yes, I'm not quite sure I understand why. The question is true in France. In France, we talk a lot about overseas territories, overseas countries, but technically, yes, we're talking about OR, so outermost regions and OCTs as well, yeah? Thank you very much. So we had another question. What is foreseen in terms of communication and dissemination for those calls in the regions? So that's another question for me, isn't it? Indeed. Well, I see that there are indeed people that we know in this room, so they will be able to communicate in the networks. So that's why it's very important to talk about the associate partners. so as to be as close as possible to the territories as well. So that's another very, very important element for communication. Another question for Madina, somebody perhaps who came in late. What are the deadlines? So can we indeed talk about the deadlines once again for the different calls for proposals for projects, and when will the candidates know that their project is going to get financed? So the first one is for the intangible cultural heritage, and now it's open until the 13th of February 2022. So of course the projects will be analyzed, it says, and the answers will be given to candidates maximum a month after we receive the nominations or the proposals rather. Now the call for the fund for mobility, so that's it's going to be continuously open until the 1st of December 2022, but we're going to have selection committees that are going to convene or that are going to meet time and again in order to assess the proposals. And in November or December, we are going to set up committees that are going to meet once a month at a very specific day, so that we can indeed examine all the proposals that will have been sent to us within the month. And the collection project, so as to be included in the catalog. Now this is open until the 13th of January 2022. So the answers for the catalog will be forwarded, or we will give you an answer maximum a month after the close of the call for proposals. There's a lot of questions here, so we had foreseen to finish at 3:30, but of course it's important that we answer all the questions, because this is a testament to the interest that you have in the project. So thank you very much.
Anne van der Bist, que je vais lire en anglais et je laisserai Madina répondre. J'ai moi-même une idée de la réponse, mais je pense que Madina répondra plus clairement. Can you request a development budget for the development process of a plan of a project? Donc je pense que c'est une, si je lis bien, que c'est une suggestion que d'intégrer la possibilité pour des projets, donc peut-être dans une deuxième phase du projet, d'obtenir un budget pour
I guess it is a possibility to have the time to develop a project. Answer. We have among us fantastic colleagues from OCTA, based in Brussels. We mentioned them before. We work together with them, and we thought of a system that will help the different candidates set up their application and design their project. It will save time, because normally you have to think about the project and then get started. It takes time. This help is for OCTs in priorities, because OCTA is an association of OCTs, but we will set up a number of webinars and chats which will benefit all possible candidates. So this should help you set up your project, as a matter of fact. Thank you. You benefit from simultaneous interpretation. So you have a number of sheets explaining what we are saying in French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. The European Commission spoke in English, for example. It was interpreted into the other 3 languages. I have a question from someone who is asking whether it will be able to listen to everything. Yes. The webinar was recorded. Recordings will be published on the website and will be available in all 4 languages. And this is an answer we gave you in the chat. We have a question from the Canary Islands. If the project is for outermost regions, it is surprising that Guyana is not part of it because it is an outermost region. I can answer, of course, we don't have any partner in Guyana, but all outermost regions and OCTs are eligible. No confusion on this particular point. We have a new question from Cyrielle Cuyassier from Mayotte. I'm not sure I get the question, but I will read it for you to understand. Ultramarine is not in the EU treaty. Oh no, it's on the one stage, two stage. The answer to calls for projects can be done in one stage, description plus budget, or in two stages, a concept note without budget. After validation from the selection committee, the candidate is invited to send his draft budget. So is this in one stage or in two stages? It is a one-stage process. The answer is very clear. You have to send everything at once. There are not several stages. You need to send all the required documents in one go. We have a question in English, which I will share, and Madina will be able to answer. Is it possible to apply to all three calls for projects at the same time? Well, it's a good question, but you still need a project that meets the selection criteria to start with. We have a project which has to do with structures, the mobility fund for individuals, so you can't be an entity and an individual, and there is a number of stakes, if you wish, or issues and specificities that make it very difficult to apply in three categories, except if your project meets absolutely all selection criteria. So it can be something that has already been set up. I will give you an example, concrete example. If you have an exhibition, for example, on intangible heritage, and it can be supported by an entity in an outermost region or OCT. Well, in this case, you can apply for the intangible heritage category or the outermost region, but you have to check all selection criteria to start with. Thank you, Medina. Another important question that I'd like to share with you, and then we will give the floor to a European MP who will be with us today. Do we have a regional or territorial distribution of selected projects? This is a highly relevant question, and I'm very happy to close on this particular question because it's crucial for us. This will be very important in our choice, in our selection of projects. We will have two types of general criteria. The first one is the quality of the project, obviously, but then all things being equal, we will give preference to a project of an outermost region or an OCT which has not been represented so far. Sorry for checking my mobile phone, but this is how I can check your questions on the chat. So thank you very much for this very enriching and rewarding session of questions and answers. I hope we were able to answer all your questions. We will have a FAQ on the website dedicated to Archipel.eu. We will feed this particular frequently asked questions tab with all your questions and whatever you send by email. As I said, we will close this launch with speeches by a number of MPs. We have the pleasure to watch a video recorded by the member of the European Parliament, Stéphane Bijou, who could not be here today, but wanted to send us a message. And we share it with you. Mr. Stéphane Bijou is a member of the European Parliament and represents La Réunion. United in diversity is the motto of Europe, but it is above all a permanent struggle. This fight, our fight, is to share the best of what we have, despite our differences, despite the geographical distance between our territories. We can share a strength which has lasted through time and of which we are the heirs. This strength is the power of culture. It is the link that unites us all across time and across oceans. Yes, we are an archipelago of geography, islands, peoples, languages, traditions, and cultures. Our territories are lands of challenges, and we know how to transform obstacles. We know and we want to build common projects to say time and again that if there are indeed differences, there is no possible division as soon as we choose to come together to build a better future. A future that starts now by consolidating our roots to better open ourselves to the world, from one continent to another, from one pole to another. The exchanges that our territories have maintained and continue to maintain with Europe, Africa, Asia, America, the Caribbean, or the Pacific archipelagos, all these links have enriched our traditions, our languages, our heritage, and finally, every day, we are a little richer because we widen our horizons. Just by looking at a map, we can see that OTCs are at a geographical and cultural crossroad, and that this position of openness and counter means that wherever we are true ambassadors for Europe. And this is it. This is exactly the ambition of this beautiful project. We will break down barriers, strengthen ties, and continue to defend this reality. Culture is alive, and it's precisely this vibrancy, this cross-fertilization that will allow us to be stronger, to face the great challenges of today and tomorrow. Engage positive energy, think out of the box. For me, this is not only the way, but above all, the essential fuel for the success of this project in which we all believe, all of us in the European Parliament. I take every opportunity to demand immediate protection of our cultural treasures. And this demand is a strong element of my report, which was adopted in Brussels a few days ago to redefine a new strategy between Europe and OCTs. And let me tell you, it is when the fight is tough that we must commit ourselves. The road is long, but this project can enable us to accelerate the momentum and the dynamics we need. It is driven by the richness of our languages, by the magical way of our musicians' instruments, by the movements of our dancers, by the talent of our artists, and by the impressive skills of our craftsmen. These are all the visible things, but we also have the strength of our intangible heritage, the Carnival of the West Indies, the Maloyo song of the Réunion, the Polynesian hereros, the Kanak costumes. We are rich, we are strong, and we are proud. In the EP, I am committed to making Europe change its view of our overseas territories. And this is what we want to do together with Archipel.eu. With you, for you, we can make our hearts beat even louder so that they resonate together with the best of humanity. This is where we aspire to launch this voluntary and voluntarily ambitious approach. You can count on me, as I know I can count on you, to make our cultural diversity shine on all the oceans and on the whole planet. The time has come and we need it. So long live the overseas territories, long live Archipelago, and long live Europe, of course. Okay. So we've just heard the member of the European Parliament, Mr. Bijou. In June 2021, our partner Octa co-organized the official launch of the OCT Friends Group in the European Parliament. And it's the French MEP Stéphane Bijou and Dutch MEP Samira Rafaela, who are co-presidents of this EU OCT Friendship Group in the European Parliament. And this is my transition to give the floor to the MEP Samira Rafaela, who is with us today. Madam, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
I hope that now everything is well, because I was not allowed to unmute, but I think so, yes. Okay, so I am very pleased to be here today and be part of this very topical webinar. Archipel.eu will contribute to positive change in safeguarding and promoting the culture of the overseas countries and territories in the outermost regions. And with my roots in Curacao, the OCTs are very important to me personally, as also a female politician with a diverse cultural background. I use my seat in the European Parliament wisely to ensure the OCTs and outermost regions are directly represented on the European level. And the Overseas Association decision of May 2021, for example, is the bedrock for the EU and OCTs to work together on a strong partnership. And through this decision and all the possibilities it provides, the aim of the pilot project is to financially support cultural professionals, artists, groups of artists, cultural organizations and institutions, and ensure that cultural heritage is strongly presented in Overseas Association decision. And last week, I hosted a group of young people from the OCTs during the European Youth event in Strasbourg. And the ideas these young people have when it comes to preserving the cultural heritage on the OCTs is very remarkable and innovative. And I therefore truly hope that this project takes the views of these youngsters into account, and that you talk to them and learn from their ideas and experiences. And this pilot program is a very important project to further promote and support the culture and heritage of the OCTs and outermost regions. Projects like these ensure that the people in these countries, territories, and regions are uplifted in their cultural heritage and recognized for receiving the benefits and support from institutions going beyond the EU. So Archipel.eu has a great vision for the upcoming 24 months to learn all persons in our EU family about their heritage and their rich culture and the role of also indigenous people in our family. So thank you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la députée européenne, Madame Rafaela, d'avoir été parmi nous.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Samira Rafaela, for your words. It is very important for us to know that you support us. As a reminder, before we close this meeting, we will give you the URL of the Archipel.eu website. It is the resource website for this project. You will find information on the 3 calls for projects. We have registered and recorded the webinar in all 4 languages, so you will be able to view again or listen to this webinar if you were not able to listen to it directly, and all the results of the calls for projects as well. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for being here. I invite you to share these 3 calls very widely so that they can reach beyond the partners already identified. The idea is to make sure we bring a very wide range of partners to this project. With all your questions, we've seen the interest that you have in this project. I think this is a collective momentum that has started. For us, it's a guarantee of success for the future of this project. And as lead and on behalf of the consortium and on behalf of the European Commission, I'd say that we were very happy to weave these links together and to allow the outermost regions and European OCTs to be better known, understood, and valued. So thank you very much to everyone and see you soon. Bye-bye.